This was the word cloud that we had, the second word cloud. And the question was, what is the first memory you have with money? Provide a word or a phrase that comes to mind. So many of that buying candy at school, happy, cream, cashews, everything around me, coins. These are some of the topics that you mentioned that was important for you in your first memory of money. And why is that important? Because each one of those kind of touched specific pieces of the model that we're going to discuss this afternoon. First and foremost, stage three of the model, financial healing, some of the healing themes, emotional money messages, fear, shame, or joy. That was what came out of that word cloud. Inherited childhood financial narratives focused on survival and scarcity. Think about that. Again, remember, stage one of the model suggests that our inherited our internal and external ecosystem, walls in and walls out. So many of these inherited financial narratives we continue to carry with us unbeknownst to us. We don't know that we carry these with us, but when asked or prompt a question, they come out subconsciously. Cultural rituals, red envelopes, tooth fairy. Someone mentioned the tooth fairy. Well, that's a cultural ritual that was inherited to you in your youth when you were coming up, and you still carry that on. Trust, control, money safety behaviors, all of that is what came out of that particular word cloud. So again, we carry many of this information with us, unbeknownst to us, that we don't even know why we think they're subconsciously implanted in our brain that we kind of always go back to, which I call financial flashbacks. So we have a situation that may come up, a question may arise, and immediately you go back to the things that was inherently given to you, unbeknownst to you. Also, you look at budgeting, framed as restriction or empowerment. So when you mention budgeting, this is what you were thinking about: messages of frugality and emotional spending limits. So when you're thinking about budgeting, that's the first thing you're thinking about: frugality and emotional spending limits. Early identifying development through allowance and spending, gaps between being told to save versus being taught how. But I'm going to give you something to think about, which is not on the slides. You may want to write this down, something you want to consider. When you think of a budget, I want you to think of it this way. Anytime that you hear the word budget, you're already telling yourself what you can and can't have. Think about that. I'm already saying to myself what I can and can't have when I think about budgeting. So, what I always tell my clients, think of it as I'm changing my lifestyle. And let me give you an example. We spoke about this, I believe, on episode six, five, I think episode five of my podcast. We had the behavioral neuroscientists come on. And one of the things that we spoke about is a diet. And so think of a diet as this way. So budgeting and diet, it kind of goes hand in hand. So when someone mentions the fact that they're going to go on a diet, when you say to yourself, I'm going to go on a diet, you are immediately saying at that particular point, at that moment, you know what you're telling yourself is what I can't have. And remember, a diet is short term. So, what happens in regards to a diet? This is so important in regards to budgeting. When I think of a diet as short term, I'm telling myself what I can't have. Therefore, if I'm saying I'm gonna go on a diet, whatever the summer's coming up, I got to get my body right, whatever the diet is coming in place. Let's say hypothetically that you go through this process of this diet and you get closer and closer to the date or time where you thought you need to be where you need to be, but you're not there. You get frustrated, you stop because remember, it's a temporary satisfaction, temporary. But if you said to yourself, instead of saying a diet, if you frame it differently and suggest, I'm going to change my lifestyle, well, changing my lifestyle and dieting is two different frames because changing my lifestyle basically suggests that I'm changing my lifestyle, but I'm not saying what I can't do. I'm just changing my lifestyle. So maybe I don't go and buy these things. Maybe I don't, eat ice cream every day. I don't know, but maybe I don't do these things. but I do it in moderation. And then eventually you will get to a point where that's part of your lifestyle, and then you don't need it at all. Well, the same thing about budgeting. Budgeting basically suggests that I can't do X, Y, and Z. But if I said I'm gonna change my lifestyle and gave myself realistic expectations, then I'm not stressing myself out. That's where your financial with stage two, the financial genetic code, when your anxiety and your trauma comes into place. Because I go back to inherited financial narratives that I may have grown up in, scarcity of resources. So I'm going back into that mode. But if I said to myself, I'm going to change my lifestyle, that's totally different. And you have these rules, the 50/30/20 rule, you can look at that as well. But the issue with the 50/30/20 rules is that everybody is in the same category. So that's why when you look at financial literacy, sometimes it can be a cookie cutter approach that doesn't really take on that person. Each person is different. So when I hear budgeting, this is what I tell my clients. Let's not use budget. Let's say change our lifestyles, because it reminds you of a diet. Because again, remember, a diet is temporary, because once you reach your goal, then you go back to the way you were. But if I change my lifestyle, then I'm going to continually live that lifestyle, which I find to be comfortable. And I've been acclimated to it, so to speak. So here's a group reflection, just a couple of questions, and this is not part of your icebreaker. I mean, yeah, your polling question, but I want you to just think about these questions here. If you want to put it in the chat to answer, that's fine. But for the most part, question number one, what do your first money memories reveal about your financial mindset today? So think about that. What do your first money memories reveal about your financial mindset today? Which money messages from childhood still influence your habits? Well, we've seen some of those in the word cloud. And these are exercises that you can perform at home when you're trying to write your journals and things of that nature. The third one, have you healed from any limiting beliefs you inherited? Remember the inherited financial narratives. Have you healed from them? But first and foremost, before you can heal from them, you have to recognize and identify what they are. The other one, did your family focus on survival or growth? Many people within the marginalized communities, we focus on survival, scarcity of resources, trying to make it to the next day. As they say, make a dollar out of 15 cents, so to speak. This is what we've come up to. So those are our inherited financial narratives. And we have to flip that narrative some kind of way. And how do you plan to reframe harmful narratives? This is a question that you have. How do you plan to reframe from harmful narratives that you have been practicing throughout your lives? Which is important, because I firmly believe that your inherited financial narratives come prior to the money scripts that Brad Klontz identify. But the money scripts are important to recognize and to understand. But I was having a discussion with one of my colleagues about this, and I firmly believe that when you look at the money scripts, is that you have to first go through and identify, what your inherited financial narratives are. So, for instance, if we look at the four money scripts again, you have money status. Well, before I get to money status, and this was the argument, this is my argument. When you're a child, up until age 20, 21, 22, 25, many of you don't even know what your money scripts are. You have no idea what money scripts are. You're like, what is this guy talking about? What is a money script? What does money status mean? I don't know what that means. What does money vigilance mean? I don't know what that means. What does money worship mean? I don't know what that means. And what does money avoidance mean? I don't know what that means. But what I do know is my inherited financial narratives. I know what having no money looks like. I know I understand what making a dollar out of 15 cents is. I know that I see my parents working 2 to 3 jobs. I know that I see my parents come in and arguing about money. These are inherited financial narratives. This is what I do know. I do know what my parents told me. I know I have my some of my cousins who keep their money in their safes at home. I have the scar tissue narratives as well, meaning that I've been scarred on financial behaviors prior to, and I'm carrying that along with me. This is what I do know. And so before I get to the money script, my argument is you have to first identify what your inherited financial narratives are, simply because we may not know what money scripts are. Probably this is the first time you've ever heard of these. But this shows you that the language and the material that are written, they're out there, but they're not written towards us. If that makes sense. They're not written towards us. So they're there from a clinical perspective, but to the street level, we don't know what that is. We are more concerned with our inherited financial narratives. Then you get to the money scripts. So today, stage five, these are some of the things that we're looking at. Our narratives: just survive, scarcity loop. These are inherited financial narratives: invisible retirement, shame, and spiral. We're going to define what wellness means, explore limiting narratives, and reframe and plan strategies. And the Q&A reflection, you can put information into the chats as well, and I'll try to answer them as we go forward. So, build sustainable wellness, which is establish lasting financial stability, align money behaviors with personal values, integrate health, planning, and peace of mind. Here's one thing that I want you to consider: financial health is financial wealth. And I'm going to say that again: financial health is financial wealth. So it's important for us to always be working towards financial health. And financial health could just be simply, again, you have your safety. And if I look at Maslow's five hierarchies of need, the bottom needs is the physiological needs: food, water, shelter. You have to have those. The next need up from there is safety. You guys mentioned that in terms of retirement. The next mode up is social. This is your social environment. Self-esteem is number four, and the top one is self-actualization. But again, we're going to focus on the bottom, which is physiological: food, water, shelter, and then safety. Those are the four that you have to really focus on, because that'll give you your financial health. We don't want to outlive our income. That's why stage four is so important in terms of literacy as well as inclusion, making sure that you're participating, don't have loss aversion, risk aversion, prospect theory. We talked about these things in the showcase in the slides as well, how we can be our own worst enemy by bringing these cognitive biases to the table, which does not allow us to participate or to invest because we have these biases in place. Herd mentality, recency biases, all of these things come into play, and we're not able to really exercise the opportunities that are there. Case in point, you have the market is going all over the place. People are panicking, becoming emotional. They're pulling their money out. And if you pull your money out on a down market, that means you have to literally double it to make the money that you lost. You have to be patient and you have to stay the course because the market has always returned. But again, that's the scarcity of resources. That's that not trusting the system. All of that is in play, and you always buy at a discount versus when the market is going well. So I have many clients I have to talk from jumping off the ledge and allow it to pretty much happen. Case in point, I had a client who provided me was it $250,000 about 6 weeks ago. And I told her, hey, we're going to put it in this product and it's going to do well. Trust me. So I sent her 6 week report. It said $266,000 today. Because I told her, you buy low, things are going to work out. You buy a lower index. And now she's happy because the money is growing. But that's, again, acquiescing, meeting with someone like myself, a professional, and take the emotions out of it and say, this is the fundamentals. This is what it looks like. So that's so important, working with someone. That's that stage three we talked about in terms of financial healing, reprogram your financial genetic code, which is a byproduct of stage one. Remember those inherited financial narratives. So this is why this is important. Inherited financial narratives. This is what happens in stage five. Invisible retirement narrative, meaning that retirement isn't for me, or just survive, don't build narrative. That happens in stage four. The inherited scarcity loop. These are, again, I've come from scarcity of resources. This is a loop that continually having me spiraling into financial shame spiral. This is the budgeting. This is why I say you have to remove yourself from thinking about budgeting and basically suggest to yourself, I'm changing my lifestyle. That key word, trust me, makes a huge difference. Even if you go 50, 30, 20, 60, 20, 20, whatever the case may be, you work with someone, you can work through that. But at the end of the day, if you changed how you frame that, I guarantee you it's going to assist you to reach your goals. So if you are trying to lose weight, so to speak, you're going on a diet, don't say I'm going on a diet. Basically suggest to yourself, I'm just changing my lifestyle. I'm changing my lifestyle. Then you give yourself realistic expectations. You don't give yourself unrealistic timelines. It's the same thing about retirement. I'm not giving myself unrealistic expectations. I'm giving myself realistic expectations. Therefore, I can meet those expectations as I move forward. Corresponding money scripts to those narratives we spoke about it, money avoidance, fear of engagement with planning. That's money avoidance. That may be a byproduct again of something that happened earlier in our lives. Money vigilance, overemphasizing on frugality and fear. Here's the thing I want to point on that particular money vigilance. You have to always think of it this way. You have to live today, and plan for tomorrow. Live today, plan for tomorrow. And money status, shame linked to financial performance. So think about it again. If we go back and look at it, go back to the other slide, invisible retirement narrative, just survive, don't build narrative, inherited scarcity loop, financial shame spiral. Again, they all dovetail into money avoidance, fear of engagement with planning. I don't want to talk about it. It stresses me out. You hear that a lot. I don't know what my bank statements look like. I don't know what my 401k statement looks like. I meet with clients and they have no idea what their 401k statements look like, believe it or not. And they've been doing it for 20, 30 years. Or money status, they're ashamed that they have not been able to reach their financial performance that their portfolio should be at. Therefore, they don't want to communicate it with anyone because they're ashamed of it. Well, that's when you have to really meet with someone to say, hey, listen, we can fix this problem, but we have to acquiesce and seek help in doing so. And that goes back to, remember, stage three, financial healing. Defining financial wellness, the ability to meet current and future financial obligations. Feel secure. That's that word that you guys mentioned. Feel secure in your financial future. Make choices that allow enjoyment of life. This is why it's so important to identify. The earlier you can identify what your financial well-being is, the better you can plan for it. I'm going to say that again. The earlier that you can identify it, the better you can plan for it. Because some people may just want to live on a boat. Some people may want to move to Portugal. Some people may want to make $1 million. Some people may want to own 20 businesses. You have to make sure that you have that written down and understand that, and then work with someone. And I continue to say this, work with a planner that can help you get there, that allow you to get there, because you're going to have to be transparent when you work with someone, which is uncomfortable for most people. Most people don't want to talk about finances, so they hold it close to the vest. But you're doing more damage than good when you take that approach, because you're not really getting the skill set and the knowledge. It's like trying to become a lawyer without going to law school. I mean, at some point, you have to meet with an attorneys or former attorneys to learn the laws and the things of that nature, and to determine what your major is going to be, what you're focusing on. Eventually, you have to get knowledge from somebody. That's why it's important to acquiesce, capitulate, meet with someone that you trust, vet those individuals, make sure that they're focused on the things that you need to focus on, which is important. that's going to allow you to get to that financial well-being. And again, I go back to, I started earlier that making sure you and your partner, your spouse, making sure you guys are on the same page, because at some points you're going to have two people have two different financial well-beings and they're pulling away from each other. So make sure we're all in alignment to get there together. Extremely important. Reframing and planning strategy. Replace limiting narratives with growth focused mantras. Set actionable short and long term goals. Again, planning. Use budgeting, savings, and insurance tools to reinforce stability. We talked about the budgeting. Remember, we're just changing our lifestyles. Saving, making sure that you're saving, but really consider saving. Yes, you can save in a traditional savings account, but again, understand you're going broke safely in that situation. It's nothing wrong having liquidity in a savings account, but if you want to grow your assets, you have to look at it as, okay, we may have to, well, no, we're going to have to invest in something using insurance tools, which remember, long-term care, make sure your tools are in place, life insurance, making sure you had DI at some point, disability insurance if you're working. But if you're in the retirement piece of it all, making sure you had long-term care, making sure you have life insurance, whether it's whole term, VULs, IULs, or ULs, making sure you have your insurance in place. If you don't know what all of those is, I kind of touched about it last workshop that we're in. You can always email me and I can kind of give you a kind of a crash course on the benefits of each one of those, because they do have their benefits. Integrate wellness practices, gratitude, automation, and financial check-ins. I call these financial checkups. It's important to always have financial checkups, meaning that you meet with your financial planner every other year, every 2 years, or once a year, whatever the case may be, to make sure that you're all in the same alignment. You can't imagine how many conversations that I have with um, uh, clients or prospective clients anyway. They would say, I haven't spoken to my financial advisor in years. Well, that's a byproduct of two things. One is that, again, remember, avoidance, money avoidance, not wanting to talk about it. So you kind of letting it go. Yeah, it's going to be okay. I think it's going to, you kind of forget about it. And in terms of money worship, right? You may see your statements and you're ashamed of your statements because you haven't made any adjustments. Again, I'll go back to stage four just for a tad. When you participate in your 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, it's important that you know exactly what your risk tolerance is. I'm going to give you a mathematical way of using a quick method to determine what your risk tolerance is. So you'll know this is important. So write this down. Risk tolerance basically suggests how much risk am I willing to take to make a profit. So what you want to think about, you take 100, the number 100, and you minus that with your age. So let's say hypothetically that one person on this call is 27 years of age. Make sure my math is right. That means that's 73. So what that's suggesting to that person, that 73% or 80% of your portfolio should be in an equity-based portfolio. 70 to 80% should be equity. The remaining 10 to 20% or 30% needs to be in bonds, meaning that you're outpacing inflation. You have a long runway. So you can literally say, okay, well, I'm 27, 28, or 30 years of age. I have time. I can take more risk at this point because I have to outpace inflation. The older you get, the less risk you need to take. But if you take 100 minus your age, that gives you a quick idea of saying, this is my time frame that I have in regards to retiring. So important. The next slide suggests another couple of questions for you. Again, when you're doing this on your own, you can kind of go through these each one individually. But what beliefs about retirement or long-term security were passed down to you? Again, these are the inherited financial narratives that was passed down to you unbeknownst. And it may not have been a verbal conversation. It may have been a visual conversation that you actually seen. I have a lot of clients would actually watch their parents and how they retired. And they're thinking, well, I don't want that. What did they do wrong? My parents worked for this company for 30, 40 years. Look at what happened to them. I don't want that to happen to me. These are inherited financial narratives. That may not have been communicated, but was visual. Where do you feel the most stable financially? Where do you feel the most stable? That's a question that you can answer yourself. These are great questions to ask yourself for self-reflection that allow you to move forward to get to generational wealth, to get to basically financial well-being. Remember, financial well-being is that's what we're trying to achieve, because without any assets, there is no generational knowledge or generational wealth, because I have nothing to pass down. So you always have to take care of yourself first. Think about it. If you're on a plane, the first thing they say when the oxygen masks fall down, they don't say put it on your kid first and then put it on you. They say put it on yourself first. Then you work on the kids or whoever else needs to have the mask. You have to first take care of yourself to help other individuals. So important. So here is our first interactive poll question that we have. I'm going to execute this for us. So this is our first one. Give you guys a couple of minutes to answer that. What financial beliefs still limit your vision of future? And again, these are so critical because it allows you to take a look, a self-examination of yourself. So we still have about 7 more to participate. Let's see here. The clubhouse leader so far is I feel confident and capable, growth minded. That's great. That's awesome. The second one is I'll never have enough. That's that scarcity mindset. I'm bad with long-term planning. That's that mindset again that we have when we come from scarcity of resources. And that's the money avoidance that we mentioned earlier, part of the money scripts that Dr. Klontz identified. So we'll take one more minute and then we'll move on with the exercise. But again, these are financial beliefs that, again, has been inherently given to us. So these are your inherited financial narratives that we do have, that we really don't know we have, and why we can think the way we do. So we're almost at the 2-minute mark. And once we get to 2 minutes, we'll close this out and we'll continue on, with the presentation. Again, if you have any comments that you want to put into the chat, feel free to do so. The more interaction we get there, the better I'm able to kind of build and address the questions from there. Okay, so we're going to close this out. And there are the results there. So you take a look at the results. 8 out of 13 participated. Many of you felt, 3 out of 8 that participated felt that they feel confident and capable. Couple, I'm bad with long-term planning. It's okay. It's not a problem. But this is why we're here. We're here to kind of reframe that to allow you to get better with long-term planning. Retirement is for people like me. And that, again, can come from you watching your parents retire, you watching relatives, friends, family, whatever the case may be. You see how they have retired and you think, well, it's not for me. Or you hear the negativity towards around it as well. And I'll never have enough. I think we all have that. We'll never have enough in terms of money because we don't want to outlive our income. But unfortunately, we're living longer. We're living longer now. So therefore, you have to be a little bit more mindful in regards to having the tools to allow yourself not to outlive your income. And that could be from Social Security. People say, "Oh, I'm not going to have it." Social Security will always be around. They would always be around. Social Security, making sure you have your 401ks in place, your IRAs. But here's one thing I want you to think about as well, too. 401ks are not built for you to retire on. And this is the misnomer. 401ks are a strategy to allow you to save money, not to retire on. Once you retire, now you take the 401k and then you place it in vehicles that's going to allow you not to outlive your income. Most people who living on 401ks, if you have to live on a 401k, in some cases, you have the 3%, the 4% rule that you take out to make sure you sustain it throughout. You have that rule itself, but most people use a 401k as a part of their portfolio and tool set to allow them not to outlive their income. So I want you to consider that as well, too. That's so important to recognize that. So now we jump into stage six. This I love stage six because generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. So now we're talking about, building legacy through estate and education. Narratives of estate planning. Don't talk about it again. That's money avoidance. Narratives, insurance resistance, because we don't believe insurance works. Work twice as hard to get ahead. We have that. The agenda. We're going to talk about generational knowledge, transparency, and family dialogue, things that you can do within your family. Talk a little bit about some tools, wills, trust, insurance, and some things of that nature. Objective build legacy through estate and education. Inherited financial narratives. Estate planning is for the rich. Now, this is a true story. Me and my wife, now I'm a financial advisor. Me and my wife, we got our estate plan 3 years ago. So I'm 60, that's 56. We got it 3 years ago. I'd be 60 this year. No, almost 4 years ago. So, and because now, granted, I am a financial planner, I was then really thinking I couldn't afford it. I was like, I couldn't afford this. Why would I do something like this? And the more and more research I started doing, being in the business, I realized that I have to do it simply because estate planning allows me to transfer my assets, stay away from probate, which is important, and have directives. Directives is so important simply because you don't want to be in a position where someone can make a decision on your life without you having written it down saying this is what I want. And another piece to it, what I always recommend my clients when they do estate planning is to always have a fiduciary. You may say, what is a fiduciary? Or you may be in law and say, I know what a fiduciary is. But what a fiduciary does, they are the individuals who will act on your accordance based upon what's written in the plan. In particular, when you have blended families, when you have multiple kids, people say, my kids, they can do the estate. Yeah, they may be, but money can be a divisive tool as well, too. But the fiduciary, what their responsibility is to say, nope, this is how we're going to do this based upon what the last person suggested, right? Because it is only when the last person passes away, and they will go in and they will make these decisions based upon that. So therefore, have family infighting, so to speak. We may still have some infighting, but at the end of the day, the fiduciary basically says this is how it is. So you have two types of estates. You have revocable and irrevocable, which is important. Revocable and irrevocable. Think about revocable as I put stuff in a box and I can change that. I can take stuff out, put stuff in. I can add someone to the estate. I can take someone off the estate. You find that a lot. You guys getting along one day. I want you in the estate. Oh, I'm not getting along with that person. I'm taking them off the estate. Because what happens is you have the ability to continue to negotiate that trust. Irrevocable trust says something totally different. You do not have any ability to do that. The courts have the ability to do that. And you usually do that when you're in a incapacitated mode. in incapacitated mode. Well, I can't make decisions. Therefore, you put the irrevocable trust in, and the judge says, despite what's going on, this trust cannot be changed. I can only administer the trust. So sometimes you have family members coming in, long lost kids coming in, coming in. That's my dad. Well, it doesn't matter. From an irrevocable trust, they can't make any changes. And we see it a lot. So remember, I was saying updating, always meeting with your financial advisor, the same thing with your planner as well. We just heard about Gene Hackman in his situation where he did not do any type of adjustments to his trust. So it is what it is. There's no adjustment. Some people left was in, some people was left out, some people shouldn't have been in, and whatever the case may be. But you have that. Also, self insurance superiority, meaning that I am going to pay for myself. And I'm going to give you an example why this doesn't work. There's three areas in life that you always have to prepare for. So this is where we come about generational wealth begins with generational knowledge, right? So here it is. There's three areas. You always have to prepare for living too long, dying too soon, or becoming disabled along the way. Those are three things you have to always prepare for. So if you meet with a financial advisor and or a planner, and if they're not talking about those three things, then they're not servicing you, because living too long, dying too soon, or becoming disabled along the way. So living too long, that's stage 5, outliving our income. So basically, what they're saying is that, do you have enough income to not outlive it? That is your annuities. Do you have annuities in place? Do you have passive income in place? What do you have in place that's not going to allow you to outlive your income? Because once you get to that point, what happens is you're working because of need, right? That you want to work because you want to stay active, but you want to work if you from more of a enjoyment. I'm going to do it to get out of the house, maybe drive Uber, whatever the case may be, go volunteer at the Kaiser, something along those lines. That's working, but I don't need the money, but I'm getting out of the house. Some people are working because they have to. That's living too long, right? That's outliving their income. The second thing is dying too soon. That's why insurance is so important, especially if you have a younger family. If you have a younger family, you always want to have some term. If you own a home, term. So here are some secrets. If you own a home, you want to have a term policy, and a term policy should fit the loan. So if I have a 30-year loan, you get a 30-year term. If my mortgage is a million, I get $1 million term. Because if something happens to me, at least I know that if I do pass on, those proceeds will go to my beneficiaries and avoid probate. That's the key. It avoids probate. It's not a part of your estate, so you're not getting taxed on it. So important. Okay. So understand that. If I have a home, I get a mortgage that matches the home. 20-year, 20-year term. 30-year, 30-year term. 25-year, 25-year term. So you match them and you try to match the loan amount as well. That's for both spouses, not just one. So that's the key for both spouses, not just one, because one of you may pass on and then you're leaving that burden onto that remaining spouse. Or if both of you guys pass on, unfortunately, you have that. That's where the estate plan comes into place, because you don't want to leave that type of money to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. That's why you have a fiduciary, and you would say that language in the estate plan that if this does happen, I want you to meet. I'm going to use myself as an example. I want you to meet, I want you to reach out to Dr. Joaquin Wallace. He's our financial advisor or planner. And then we want him to put these monies into these type of funds for my kids. Okay, then that's what I do. That's why the fiduciary is important. Long-term care. Why is long-term care important? Think about it. Self-insurance. Many of us, remember I said, live too long, die too soon, or become disabled along the way. Those are the three things you have to plan for. There's less than 1% chance you're going to pass away today, but it's a 100% chance it's going to happen, right? So we know that. In terms of becoming disabled along the way, there's a 20% chance that you're going to become disabled along the way because we're living longer. So if that's the case, you're going to have to reach into your savings to pay for that. So think about that. It's $7,000 per month today if you needed to go to some sort of facility. So the money that you have saved in your 401k or your savings account, savings plan, those monies will be used to keep, for your long-term care. And in 5 to 10 years, they're estimating that cost is going to be 12,000. So imagine that, $12,000 per year just for long-term care. That's $144,000 per year if you're in a facility. And we're talking about having your own room. Think about that. If you're sharing a room, it's half of that. So you want to be in your room by yourself or you want to share your room. That's important. That's why long-term care is important to have. That's why having an insurance policy with some sort of long-term care rider is important, right? So these are the things that you have to think about when we talk about transferring wealth. Well, oftentimes and not, we're not able to do so simply because we don't have things in place. I want you to think about that. So that goes back to, again, money avoidance, delaying planning or avoidance of discussions. We don't want to talk about it. Money vigilance, overemphasizing on control without communication. I want to know what I'm doing, but I want to control everything. I'm not willing to acquiesce. Money status, pressure to perform or hide vulnerability around legacy tools. Those are the three scripts that follow in that area. Remember those inherited financial narratives that I spoke about. So first, I got to identify the narratives, and then we can attack the money scripts. So they work hand in hand. Defining generational knowledge, passing down more than money, mindset, value, literacy. This is the key. I would say that's probably more so than the assets itself. Because if you didn't know, 70% of assets are lost by the second generation. So you may be first generation, or you may be second generation. But if you're the one if you're in a better position than your parents are, you probably will be first generation. Consider yourself first generation. So your job is to make sure your second generation do not lose 70% of those monies. And then by third generation, it's only 10% remaining. 90%. So that means you, your children, and then your grandchildren. When it gets to your grandchildren, 10% is remaining of the empire that you created, simply because not passing down the knowledge itself, understanding, having estate plans, having insurance policies, having long-term care. All of these things impact your ability to transfer that knowledge and or assets because we don't have anything again. So it goes back to what I said earlier, stage 5. You want to get to a point of financial well-being because if I have, I can give. If I don't have, I can't give. That's why stage 4 is important, financial edification. I hope you see what's going on here. Each one of those stages are connected with one another. You can't go with one without the other. You can't jump across. You can't skip a phase. You have to go through the entire model, and then eventually you may go back and forth, oscillate from different stages. But for the most part, you start from the one to get to stage 6, which is generational knowledge, and eventually you create generational wealth, which I say create your financial footprints. Wills, asset transfer, trust, control and protect family wealth, insurance, income replacement, legacy creation, estate liquidity, power of attorneys. That's included in your estate planning, healthcare directives, basically telling those whoever the fiduciary what you want to be done. You may want a DNR. That's what you may want. So you have the directive. This is exactly what happened. And remember too, when you have your wife, HIPAA, they can get information, but your kids can't. So think about this. This is important. Let's say hypothetically that you don't have a health care directive and the spouse is no longer alive. You have one remaining parent. Parents in the hospital. Kid comes talk to the doctor. The doctor can't give the kid the information because they don't have healthcare directives. So they can't communicate exactly what to do or how to do what to do or information simply because they're protected by HIPAA. So that's why it's important. Let's give you another example. Let's say if you have children, 18, 19-year-olds, something happens to them. If there's not a healthcare directive in place, they're not they by HIPAA laws, they can't give you information. Just think about that. So you can't get the information about your own children. So they have to complete healthcare directives as well. Keep that on file because again, you never know what can happen. This again is planning, educating, understanding. So here's some questions again for you in terms of your case reflection and family dialogue. Question number one, has your family openly discussed estate planning? Yes or no? How Who taught you what you know about legacy or inheritance? Probably the first time you're hearing about us today, right? But if not, who taught you that? Or if someone did, who? And how can you increase transparency with the next generation? What does that mean? Conversation, sitting down, having conversation with those that are around your loved ones. Hey, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to make this happen. So here's our second polling question in regards to that. Hope you guys are getting something out of this. So let's see, go here, close. Let's see, back here. Okay. So here's our second polling question. Good. I was going to ask anybody to see it. It's okay. So, which belief? So again, we'll go for a couple of minutes on this one as well. Seems as though we have the same 8 people participating. Oh, we got to 10 now. Let's see. I was encouraged to build and transfer knowledge. That's excellent. Talking about money is uncomfortable. Yes, it is. Estate planning is only for the wealthy. I thought the same thing too, but now I am a true, true benefit of it all. In fact, I constantly, when I meet with my clients, I have an estate planner that I refer them to. Now, here's something I want you to consider. I would say if I'm looking at 100% of my client base, I refer all 100% to a financial estate planner, all 100%. Out of that, I would say 2 to 3% have actually went forward on getting an estate plan. Think about that, 2 to 3%. Now, the cost is around $3,000 to $4,000. Some cases they could put you on a payment plan, but for the most part, but I have those same clients traveling, purchasing cars, toys, which they feel is important. But again, planning for our demise is something that we're just not comfortable with doing. And we're talking about individuals with blended families, multiple homeowners, business owners, and they still cannot see the value of getting an estate plan. So understand that. Yes, yes, there is. There's also a taboo about estate planning. Culture plays a big part. We have to unlearn that. I totally agree. That's why we're here, Miss Lopez. You're going to be the one championing that because that is so true. Again, those are those inherited financial narratives that we've been speaking about. So stage 7 is the final stage. Objective, grow and expand generational wealth. Narratives, deserving wealth, money changes people. Narratives anchor guilt. That means that you're just 10 toes down. You're not doing anything. Success isolation. Many people believe that the more success I get, the more isolation, which does happen. It does happen. But again, you have to align yourself with those individuals. So if we look at Maslow's five hierarchies of needs, remember physiological, the bottom need, safety, the second need, social, your social environment, that's the third need. If you're around like minded individuals, then you're in a like minded environment. So it's important that you align yourself with those individuals who are like minded in your goals and objectives, right? And you guys are students. You understand the difference between objectives and goals. I always go back and forth this when I teach my courses. Objectives, goals is the end result. Objectives are the things that's going to allow me to get to the goal, right? My goal is to graduate law school. My objective is I have to hit these numbers. My goal is to become a lawyer. My objective is I have to pass the bar, right? So that I got it one to the other, right? That's so important to understand. Inherited financial narratives, deserving wealth, anchor guilt, success means isolation, money changes people. I've always said that money doesn't change people. The and what I mean by that is they were always who they were. They just didn't have the money, right? So money didn't change them. This is who they always were. They just never had the money. So now, since they have the money, now they're just taking on the behavior. They're their DNA is coming forward. I don't think it changes them. I think that's who they were. And that may be a product again of your inherited financial narratives and your internal and external ecosystem. Walls in and walls out. What I see when I walk out the door. I was just having this conversation. I was looking at the draft. Me and my editor was talking this morning. I'm looking at the draft, and I was saying to her, man, look at all the inherited financial narratives that's going on there. People know that they'll become millionaires at some point, and how they're dressing, how they're carrying themselves, basically saying, hey, look at me. Look at me. I've made it now. Worshiping money or status, have no idea of what's going on. We don't even know if they're going to last that long because we know that many millionaires and athletics become thousandaires over time. Wealth that lasts beyond one lifetime. Remember, we talked about that 70% of your wealth to the first generation. Consider yourself your you and then your kids first generation. So when it gets to that, your children, 70% loses the money or the assets that you was able to establish. And then your grandchildren, 10% remains. So 90% of everything that you've established is gone. So true wealth equals legacy plus values plus sustainable systems. This is where I say creating your financial footprints includes financial, social, and intellectual capital, right? Again, your social environment means a lot. Breaking the myths. We just mentioned that. Reframing money changes people. Money reveals values. Think about that. Money reveals values. The more money you have, it reveals your values, who you are. Release anchor guilt built around family and success. Normalize wealth as a tool for impact, not isolation. Think about what you can do with money. Think about how you can help individual with money. You don't have to walk around and showcase it all. I mean, you can. It's nothing wrong with um, purchasing goods, material things. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. You worked hard for that. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I always encourage it. Go buy you something that you always wanted. Enjoy yourself. Go on vacation. Do the things that you always wanted to do. Why do you have to be in isolation? Enjoy your life simply because, remember, you life isn't guaranteed. Live today, plan for tomorrow. If you do everything correctly, your stage 5 can be outstanding. Business ownership and entrepreneurship, investment portfolios and real estate. These are some of the things when you look at strategically, family giving plans and legacy conversations community empowerment, and nonprofit boards. These are things that you can do if you're able to do that, right? And here's something to think about. Consider this. Most small business owners. So if you become an attorney, you open your own practice. So think about this. I'm an attorney X, I open my own practice. Many of those individuals that's the attorney X and opens their own practice do not have a retirement plan. Think about that. They don't have a retirement plan because they're not participating one. But let's take that same person. I'm working for a firm. They're offering a retirement plan. Now you may not participate in it, but you should. In some cases, they encourage it. But if I own my own business, I'm not doing that because that's that money avoidance again. I'm not comfortable with talking about that, and I don't know what to do. I don't have a financial planner in place. I have no one I can bounce ideas off of. Finally, what legacy are you actively building? What limiting beliefs are you ready to let go of? Now, these are questions that you're going to ask yourself today. And what message do you want future generations to inherit from you? Finally, the 7 stage overview. So, what was able to do in these 3 weeks? First, we talked about financial awareness, walls in, walls out, financial genetic code, healing, right? Financial genetic code, trauma, anxiety, financial healing, reprogramming stages 2 and 1, financial edification, literacy and inclusion, financial well being. This is what we talked about today, not outliving our income. Number 6, generational knowledge. Remember, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. And 7, generational wealth. 6 and 7, you're creating your financial footprints to get to generational wealth. Some questions that you can take away. Here's some of the narratives that we was able to take away from each of the actual workshops. Stage 1, money doesn't grow on trees, silence narrative. Scarcity loop, shame around spending, scar tissue narrative. Remember we talked about that. Financial Matridom narrative. Stage 4, budgeting means you're broke, risk aversion, prospect theory. We talked about that. You can go back and look at those slides. Today, invisible retirement, just survive, shame spiral, estate planning is for the rich, work twice as hard. No, we know that's not true. Anchor guilt, deserving wealth, money changes people. No, money, you really get a chance to look at the values when you have money. The scripts, money avoidance, fear, shame, rejection, vigilance, hoarding, financial control, low trust, status, linking worth with financial image, worship, idealizing wealth over consumption. What we've learned, what I hope you've learned, is financial trauma often precedes financial decision making, right? So important, those financial inherited narratives. Generational beliefs shape money behaviors. Again, inherited financial behaviors. Wealth building is both emotional and structural. You got to deal with the emotion part of it and then add the structural part. Literacy without healing limits transformation. That's why that stage 3 is so important. Without stage 3, it's going to be a challenge. And finally, generational wealth equals legacy plus values plus sustainable systems. Applying the model. Now, how do you apply it? Identifying your inherited narratives with money scripts, right? Understand those. Reframing limiting beliefs using journaling and or coaching. Implement stages 4 and 7, budgeting, investing, and planning. Remember, budgeting, we're changing that word to changing our lifestyles, right? Budgeting, we know what it means, but in our mind's eye, we're saying, yeah, I'm budgeting, but I'm also, you can put it in parentheses, changing my lifestyle. Starting to use family conversations, stage 6, and use your story to build legacy. Many of you are going to be so successful one day that you're going to be able to come back in your community and building your legacy. How are you going to do that? Remember, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. You are the bridge, you are the legacy, you are the cycle breaker. You have the ability to break the cycle. Carry forward what builds. Live behind what no longer serves. So whatever was behind you, leave that baggage behind you. And so I'm going to give you something else to write down before our final polling question. I want you to write this down. This is so important. There's five financial professionals. There's five. You have the financial educator. What you went through today, these last 3 weeks, is education. Financial educator, important. You have the next one is a financial counselor. A financial counselor is the one that you're going to meet with to help you reach your goals. Maybe, hey, I want to purchase a home. That means you got to get your credit in check. Maybe I want to, um, um, the other stuff that's out there. Whatever you need to do to make it happen. So this is what I need to do. They're the ones going to help you get there. More of a counselor. Think about a counselor, guidance counselor. When you go into college, you sit with your guidance counselor, you tell them what you want, and they can kind of chart you a path. That's what the counselor does. The third one is a therapist, behavioral financial therapist. This is an industry that's growing. This is an industry that's growing exponentially. This is where you meet with someone and they can help you break down those inherited financial narratives. Well, if you and your spouse, partner, you guys go in and you talk about it. The next one, number four, is financial advisor. That person is can help you in terms of investment, taking you to the right path, breaking down your risk tolerance levels, looking at what portfolios is right for you to reach your long-term goals. That's the advisor. And then you have the planner. That person takes all the information and they're able to chart for you a bona fide plan, which includes estate planning, insurances, long term care, investments, exit plans, strategies along that nature, with a social security, disability insurance, property and casualty insurance, all of that. That person, the planner, is able to put all of that. They take all that information and provide you an actual plan that you can either you'll pay them a nominal fee to use it. They can put it in place. Some of them can, some of them can't, depending on what license they have. Or you take that plan, you pay for it, and then you go to an advisor and say, hey, I received this financial plan, and then I need you to implement it. That's the five. So again, you have the educator, the counselor, the therapist, the advisor, and finally, the planner. Final polling question for you. He's saying this is it. No more polling questions. Like, oh my God, more polling questions. This is the final one. This one says, which narrative most blocks generational wealth? They're coming in rapid fire. Let's see here. Wow. 56% says success means isolation. Yes, it can have that, right? The more successful you are, the more isolated you do become, right? But again, remember I said earlier, you have to make sure that you're in an environment that promotes that. You have to be in an environment that promotes that lifestyle because if not, you're going to, what they say, keeping it real, I'm in the hood, I'm going to keep it real. Yeah, you can keep it real to a certain point, but even Ice Cube moved out. Right? I mean, at the end of the day, he moved out as well. So when you look at it from that perspective, you can keep it real to a certain degree. And at some point, you have to move on. But one thing that you have to consider when you make that move, you don't, it's one thing we call financial passengers. Your kids are now passengers, excuse me, and they're watching you and how you react. So we have what they call a helicopter parent. You can have a lawnmower parent, whatever the case may be, but you have to make sure that you do not put your kids in a position where they don't have their trials and tribulations because as we know, there's some people 35, 40, and 50 years of age who are still financial passengers to their parents. So you have to be clear with that. You have to give them, you have to make them accountable to show them trials and tribulations, because if not, they're going to be a handful as they get older. And eventually, they're going to be parents. They're going to be your grandkids as well. So you definitely want to make sure that, they are in the best position as possible. So this is what we did. That's the final slide. That's the 7 stage model, and I hope that you guys really enjoyed this these 3 weeks. I really appreciate you guys going forward. So I got one question here. How do